We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet to share these conversations on the Vegan Compass podcast.
We extend our respect to elders past and present, as well as any of our listeners and guests. Hello and welcome to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change. We are your hosts, Ric Allport and Mackenzie Cross.
From wherever you're listening, please be sure to like and subscribe to support this podcast. Now to the episode.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Vegan Compass podcast. I'm Mackenzie Cross and joining me today is none other than Ric Allport. How are you today, Ric?
Hey Mackenzie, I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to dive into this week's news episode. We've got a real mix of stories, some that will get your blood boiling, some that are a bit more heartwarming, and one in particular that is downright win for animals. You know, the usual roller coaster when it comes to animal rights and vegan news.
Absolutely. It's always a bit of a balance, isn't it? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes it's all rolled up in one. So, for our listeners, we've got a powerful lineup today covering topics ranging from tragedy for wildlife in Zimbabwe and Namibia to uplifting vegan market trends and huge wins for animals from Emma Hurst and the Animal Justice Party.
That's putting it lightly, but let's get into it. Mackenzie, should we start with the tough news first?
Yeah, let's get it over with, and then we can move on to the more positive notes. Our first story today is from ABC News, covering Zimbabwe and Namibia, where officials have announced plans to kill hundreds of elephants to provide food for people. It's a grim reality, hundreds of these majestic beings reduced to a source of food due to human mismanagement of resources and land.
Yeah, it's a really difficult story to stomach, isn't it? It's just such a glaring example of what happens when economic desperation leads to decisions that quite frankly ignore the intrinsic value of life. Elephants are sentient, they mourn, they have deep family connections. To just disregard all of that is absolutely heartbreaking. According to the ABC News article, the governments involved are defending this move as a way to address food insecurity, but at what cost to biodiversity and ethical treatment?
And it feels like we keep repeating the same mistakes, doesn't it? This issue is rooted in short-term thinking, such a lack of understanding about what sustainable coexistence could really look like. We need to be supporting policies that allow both wildlife and people to thrive without the violence. The ecosystems these elephants are part of are so vital to the overall health of the environment, and losing them impacts everything in that local system of biodiversity.
That is so true. And speaking of interconnectedness, there's a great piece in Psychology Today, right now, about the broad reach of vegan vision, how it extends well beyond just what's on our plates. Veganism is about empathy, about recognizing sentience in all living beings. It's kind of the antithesis of what we're seeing in Zimbabwe and Namibia right now.
Totally agree. The Psychology Today article delves into how veganism influences not only our diet, but also our fashion choices, our entertainment, and the way we treat every living being. It's a cultural shift, moving away from this archaic belief that animals are commodities. And the article makes a great point. Veganism isn't just about food, it's a way of thinking about our relationships with others, about justice and compassion in all areas of life. When we think about our environment, our fellow creatures, we realise how much this mindset is desperately needed.
Exactly. And speaking of mindsets, let's lighten things up a bit. Mackenzie, are you a happy little Vegemite?
I'm a happy little Vegemite, as bright can be.
Oh my God, she's singing.
We all enjoy our Vegemite for breakfast, lunch and tea.
We shouldn't encourage her.
Yes, I am, of course. So we came across an interesting piece on Green Matters that dives into what Vegemite tastes like. For those listening from other countries and who haven't had the pleasure, imagine something salty, savoury, a bit like soy sauce but way thicker and with a real umami kick. If you're not an Aussie, it's divisive, that's for sure.
Vegemite is a rite of passage for many Australians, right? And a good reminder that vegan food isn't always green smoothies and fresh salads. Sometimes it's, well, spreadable umami, confusion in a jar. According to the Green Matters article, the spread is often described as salty, yeasty, and distinctly savoury. My eldest daughter just calls it yuck. They even mention that while it's not for everyone, those who love it really love it, and it holds a special place in Australian culture. It's almost like a cultural badge of honour to enjoy it. And let's not forget, it's 100% vegan, packed with B vitamins, and has a very distinctive flavour that's hard to replicate. I still have to laugh though, when Vegemite received its 100% vegan certification, there were heaps of meat-eating trolls who screamed and yelled saying they would never eat Vegemite again, that ingredients had changed to suit vegans. It tastes different. The outrage was absolutely hilarious, especially when we know absolutely nothing changed in the recipe.
That's exactly right. So funny. And the article also mentioned that Vegemite was developed during a time when imported foods were scarce, making it a homegrown solution packed with nutrients, something Australians could be proud of. But on the topic of food, here's some more uplifting news. A new report from the Kilgore News Herald tells us that the vegan food market is projected to grow by over $29 billion from 2024 to 2028. That's massive.
It really is, and it's proof that people are becoming more conscious of their choices, especially when it comes to the impact on animals and the planet. The report goes into detail about how the growing demand is driving innovation in vegan alternatives, especially from dairy-free cheeses to meat substitutes. We're seeing better quality, more variety, and more people realising that the options are good for everyone. The Kilgore News Herald also points out that the rising demand is being fueled by increasing awareness about health benefits, climate change, and animal welfare, which is exactly what we need to see.
It's an exciting time, and it means more resources being directed towards innovation in vegan foods. And speaking of big initiatives, Mercy for Animals shared some insights for World Vegan Month, which is this month, November. It's all about making it easier for people to try veganism with events, support groups, and lots of uplifting stories. The focus is on building community and creating an inclusive environment for those wanting to make the switch.
It's such a good opportunity for those curious about veganism to get started. I always tell people, just give it a month, explore the different foods, and see how you feel. There's so much support available now, and it really can make a difference, not just for your health, but for the animals and the planet as well. And the events planned for World Vegan Month are really aimed at providing that positive, community-oriented experience.
And speaking of awareness, there's something deeply troubling coming out of COP29. It looks like meat and dairy products were intentionally mislabelled, leading consumers to believe that they're more sustainable than they really are. This kind of greenwashing is so harmful because it misleads people into thinking that these industries are compatible with environmental goals.
Yeah, it's deeply disappointing, but hardly surprising. The plant-based news report highlighted how the meat and dairy industries are using vague labels like carbon neutral without any sustainable backing. It's just another way for these industries to muddy the waters. Meat and dairy industries have been trying to rebrand themselves for a while now. The fact that this misinformation is surfacing at such a critical global forum really shows the lengths they'll go to. We need transparency, not deceit. If we're going to address climate change meaningfully, we need real solutions, not smoke and mirrors.
Couldn't have said it better, Rick. Now, let's move to something that is disturbing, but hopefully some good will come from it. We've got a story here about tourists in Australia apparently feeding kangaroos trash. According to the Cool Down, kangaroos in tourist-heavy areas are being fed things that they definitely shouldn't be eating. Junk food, trash and the like. And it's really very saddening and disrespectful. Feeding wildlife junk food is incredibly harmful to their health.
Yeah, there's definitely no humour in this one. It's a classic example of tourists wanting that perfect Instagram moment, but it ends up putting animals in danger. Kangaroos have specific dietary needs, and feeding them human food, let alone trash, can lead to serious health problems. The Cool Down article highlighted how local wildlife officials are trying to raise awareness and educate tourists about the dangers of feeding kangaroos anything other than what they naturally eat. It's important that we educate tourists about the dangers of this kind of behaviour. Wildlife should be respected, not treated like amusement park attractions.
Exactly. Education is key here. If we want to care for wildlife, we need to do it properly, with respect and from a distance. It's about finding that balance between appreciation and protection.
Absolutely. So let's wrap up with an amazingly good news story to end on a positive note. There is some major good news out of New South Wales. Emma Hurst, the Animal Justice Party MP, has successfully gotten a ban on puppy farming passed in New South Wales Parliament. This is a huge victory for animals and a testament to Emma's relentless work and dedication. Puppy farming is cruel and exploitative, and this ban is a major step forward in protecting companion animals.
Such fantastic news and a well-deserved win for Emma and for the animals, of course. I believe she's been working on this ban for 6 years. I'm so impressed by how much dedication it's taken to get this passed in Parliament.
We really need to make sure we get more Animal Justice Party MPs in all levels of government, because if we look at the work that Georgie and Emma are doing, we're getting so much happening. So we need the support for animal politicians.
Definitely. And we have invited both Emma and Georgie to speak with us on the podcast. So hopefully we can arrange for that interview to happen soon, and we'll be asking them all the questions you want to know about how they're getting wins for animals in the Australian parliamentary system.
And if you want any questions, if you want us to ask any questions of both Emma and Georgie, please message us and let us know, because yes, we can put those questions to them.
So that wraps up this week's news episode. To all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to share this episode to spread the word, and subscribe on your preferred platform to be notified when we release new episodes.
Thanks everyone, and we'll catch you next time on the Vegan Compass podcast. Thanks for listening to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change.
Be sure to follow us on social media at @thevegancompass_podcast. See you next time.